Logan jolted awake, his chest heaving as if he'd been running for miles. His heart thundered in his ears, his mind clouded with remnants of a dream so vivid it felt too real to dismiss. He lay still, his body trembling with confusion. Serafina, her face was still fresh in his mind. Her blue skin shimmered under the dim light of a world he had never seen, and her voice, gentle yet filled with urgency, echoed in his thoughts. "You must remember." With effort, Logan sat up in his bed, blinking against the soft glow of the early morning sun seeping through the blinds. But something felt wrong. The apartment, his safe space, suddenly seemed alien to him, as though it no longer belonged. His chest rose and fell rapidly, and his thoughts were a jumbled mess. Was it a dream? No, this was different. The dream, if that's what it was, left behind something tangible. His hand fell onto his wrist, and his breath caught in his throat. There, glowing faintly, was a strange symbol, pulsing softly, like it had its own heartbeat. The same symbol from the dream, or rather, the memory. Logan frowned, turning his wrist over and over, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't an ordinary dream, and he had experienced memory implants before. But nothing like this. It was as if the memory hadn't just been inserted into his mind. It was a part of him, buried deep in his core. The symbol stirred a strange sense of familiarity, like something important he had long forgotten. He stood, legs shaky beneath him, and stumbled across the room to the bathroom. The harsh light stung his eyes as he turned it on, and he stared at his reflection. His usual tired face stared back at him, but his focus was drawn to the glowing symbol on his wrist. It pulsed softly, reflecting in the mirror, sending shivers down his spine. Serafina. Her presence was so vivid in his mind, the smoothness of her touch, her luminous eyes, the way her blue skin shimmered in the light. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, but there was something more. It wasn't just about her appearance, it was the connection. Something about her was deeply rooted in his soul, but he couldn't explain it. Not yet. At work, Logan couldn't focus. Normally, coding helped clear his mind, but today was different. The mundane tasks of programming felt distant, meaningless, as visions of Serafina kept flashing through his mind. He saw her smile, the warmth in her eyes. He could hear her laughter, soft yet full of humor and something deeper, like they shared something profound, but none of it made sense. "Hey, you good?" Mason, his coworker, snapped him out of his daze. Logan blinked, shaking his head slightly as he pulled himself back to reality. "Yeah, just didn't sleep well last night." Mason raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Logan forced a smile, trying to appear normal, but inside he felt like he was unraveling. How could he explain the alien woman he couldn't stop thinking about? Or the strange symbol that had appeared on his wrist overnight? Throughout the day, the symbol glowed softly under his sleeve, catching his attention every time. It was like a beacon, pulsing with an unseen force, making his pulse quicken. He tried to ignore it, pulling his sleeve down to hide it. But the more he tried to suppress it, the more it called to him, as if it were trying to tell him something. That evening, as Logan slumped on the couch, the TV played in the background. His attention drifted in and out until a news report caught his ear. Mysterious symbols have been appearing throughout the city, authorities report. Witnesses describe the symbols as glowing and unidentifiable, with no clear explanation for their origin. Logan's blood ran cold as the anchor described symbols identical to the one on his wrist. His mind raced. What was happening? How could this be connected to Serafina? He sat up straight, his heart pounding in his chest. Desperation pushed him to pick up the phone and call MemCorp, the company responsible for memory implants. He needed answers, and fast. After a painfully long pause, the head of security answered. His voice was cold, mechanical. "There seems to be a malfunction with your implant. We need you to come in immediately for adjustment." Logan's instincts screamed that something wasn't right. The way the man spoke, it felt like more than a simple malfunction. The unease gnawed at him. He politely declined, hung up, and locked his doors, anxiety skyrocketing. That night, as Logan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, A growing sense of danger filled him. And sure enough, just before midnight, a knock came at his door. He crept to the window, heart pounding. Two men in black suits stood outside. MemCorp agents. Logan's pulse spiked. He wasn't going with them. He grabbed a backpack, stuffing it with essentials before climbing out the window, heart pounding in his chest. His feet hit the alley below with a soft thud, and he sprinted into the night. Every breath felt like fire in his lungs, but he couldn't stop. Not now. Not when he had to find Serafina. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Logan yanked it out, breathless. "Meet me in Chinatown. It's time." Serafina. The name sent a surge of adrenaline through his veins. He didn't know how, but he trusted her. He moved quickly, dodging through side streets and alleyways, always looking over his shoulder, the ominous presence of the MemCorp agents looming in his mind. The crowded streets of Chinatown welcomed Logan with a chaotic blur of neon lights and unfamiliar faces. The buzz of conversation and city noise filled the air, but all Logan could focus on was finding Serafina. His heart raced, his pulse thudding in his ears as he scanned the crowd. His wrist throbbed, the symbol glowing brighter now, as if guiding him toward her. And then he saw her. Serafina moved through the crowd with a grace that was almost ethereal. Her blue skin shimmered under the neon lights, her eyes glowing with the intensity of a distant star. She spotted him, and in that moment, the world seemed to slow down. Her lips curved into a soft, teasing smile, the kind that made his heart skip a beat. Logan pushed through the throngs of people, every step bringing him closer to her. His heart pounded louder with every second. "Serafina!" he called, his voice barely audible over the bustling street. She turned toward him, her eyes locking onto his. Recognition and relief flickered across her face. "Logan, you remembered," she said, her voice lilting, almost flirtatious. "Took you long enough." She stepped closer, her fingers brushing his wrist where the symbol glowed, sending a tingle up his arm. Logan's breath hitched as their eyes met, the connection between them sparking with an intensity that made everything else fade away. Before he could speak, her lips softly brushed against his, the contact brief but electrifying. Logan barely had time to react before a firm grip yanked him backward. MemCorp agents. Logan's mind raced, panic surging through him. His last thought before darkness overtook him was of Serafina's kiss, the warmth of her lips still lingering on his. Logan woke up in his apartment, drenched in sweat. His wrist was glowing brighter than before, pulsing with energy. Groaning, he tried to sit up, his body heavy with fatigue. A voice whispered in his mind, soft but insistent. "Logan, you have to remember. Our past, our mission, it's all connected." Serafina's voice filled his thoughts, urging him to remember. But the memories felt just out of reach, like fragments of a dream that slipped away the moment he reached for them. He needed help. Logan reached out to Hunter, an old hacker friend with a knack for getting into places he shouldn't. Hunter was sarcastic, brilliant, and loved a good conspiracy. If anyone could dig into MemCorp's secrets, it was Hunter. After hours of hacking through encrypted files, Hunter's eyes widened. "You're not gonna believe this," he muttered, fingers flying across his keyboard. "Your memories, they're real, man. You were part of something huge, like extraterrestrial huge." Logan's mind spun. Everything he thought was fantasy was real. His connection to Serafina, their shared past, it wasn't just an implant, it was his life, and MemCorp had been suppressing it. A message flashed on Logan's phone. "Meet me at the old train station. It's time to leave." Logan's heart raced. He had to find her, protect what they had once shared. At the old abandoned train station, the dim lights flickered as Logan arrived. Serafina stood there, her silhouette framed against the dusty glow of the forgotten station. She turned, her eyes meeting his with a mix of urgency and relief. "You found me," she said softly, stepping closer. Her hand gently touched his glowing wrist. "You really don't remember, do you?" Logan's pulse quickened at her touch. Her presence was electric, sending warmth through him. "Maybe you could remind me," he said, his voice low, teasing, but there was a nervous excitement behind his words. Serafina smiled, a smile that held years of longing. "Always the charmer," she teased, but her eyes held deeper emotions. Their connection, now undeniable, was a tether to a past he was just beginning to remember. Without another word, Serafina led him through a hidden portal at the back of the station. As they stepped through, the world around them shifted. Colors bled into one another, and the air hummed with energy. Logan stumbled, overwhelmed by the feeling of familiarity washing over him. They had arrived on Etheria. As the portal closed behind them, the world of Etheria revealed itself to Logan's awestruck eyes. The landscape was a breathtaking blend of natural beauty and ethereal energy. Towering crystalline structures reached toward the sky, their surfaces shimmering with a spectrum of colors. In the distance, rivers of light coursed through the land, glowing with the same energy that pulsed from the symbol on Logan's wrist. Logan felt a strange sense of belonging, as though he had been here before. Memories of this place flickered at the edges of his consciousness, but they remained hazy, just out of reach. Serafina stepped beside him, her eyes fixed on his face as if gauging his reaction. "Welcome home," she said softly, her voice laced with both affection and sorrow. "This is where it all started." Logan swallowed hard, his mind racing. "Home?" The word felt foreign on his tongue. He looked around, trying to reconcile the feeling of familiarity with the alien beauty of Etheria. How can this be home? "I don't remember any of it." Serafina placed a hand gently on his arm, her touch grounding him. "The memories will come back. Slowly, but they will. Etheria was part of your life, just as much as Earth was." Logan turned to her, his eyes searching hers. "Why did I forget? Why did I leave?" Serafina's expression grew somber, her hand slipping from his arm. "Because of the void," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a cosmic force that devours everything in its path. Worlds, civilizations, even memories. You and I, we fought it together. But when MemCorp discovered the truth, they erased your memories to control you, to keep you away from the fight. They wanted the void's power for themselves." Logan clenched his fists, anger bubbling up inside him. "So they wiped my mind and left me in the dark while this thing, this void, is out there threatening everything?" Serafina nodded, her gaze filled with sorrow. "They didn't just wipe your mind. They implanted false memories to make you forget about Etheria, about us. But the symbols, they're part of the ancient technology here, a connection to Etheria's energy. They've started to reawaken in you." Logan looked down at the glowing symbol on his wrist, the pulsing energy now seeming more ominous than before. "And now MemCorp is after me because I'm remembering?" "Yes," Serafina said, her voice hardening. "But we're not going to let them win. We need to find the artifact, the one that can stop the void and protect both Earth and Etheria. That's why we were chosen, Logan. Together, we're the key to activating it." The weight of Serafina's words settled over him. This wasn't just about regaining his memories anymore. This was about saving entire worlds from destruction. He nodded, determination settling into his bones. "Then let's find this artifact and stop them." Serafina's lips curved into a soft smile, relief flickering in her eyes. "I knew you'd come around." She glanced at the horizon. "We don't have much time. The void is getting stronger, and MemCorp agents won't stop hunting us. We need to move quickly." Their journey across Etheria was unlike anything Logan had ever experienced. The landscape was alive with vibrant energy, and every step they took seemed to draw them deeper into the planet's mystical core. Strange creatures with translucent wings fluttered past them, leaving trails of light in the air. The sky above them shifted from day to night in the blink of an eye, the stars twinkling in vibrant colors Logan had never seen before. Despite the beauty around them, the urgency of their mission weighed heavily on their minds. The void was a constant shadow looming in the distance, and MemCorp agents were closing in on their trail. Serafina had mentioned they would need to pass through several trials to reach the artifact, and the first of those trials was fast approaching. One evening, as they set up camp under the glow of Etheria's twin moons, Serafina sat beside Logan, her blue skin illuminated by the soft light. She watched him silently for a moment before speaking. "You're starting to remember more, aren't you?" Logan stared into the fire, its flickering flames reminding him of something he couldn't quite place. "I am," he admitted. "It's like pieces of a puzzle coming together. I remember the way you laugh, The way you used to tease me when I got too serious." He looked up at her, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "You still do that, by the way." Serafina chuckled, the sound sending warmth through Logan's chest. "You make it too easy," she teased, but her eyes softened as she leaned in slightly. "It's good to see glimpses of the real you coming back." Logan's heart skipped a beat as she closed the distance between them. Her presence was comforting, yet electric, like they had shared a lifetime together, and in many ways they had. He wanted to remember it all, to feel that connection fully again. "How much did we mean to each other?" Logan asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Serafina's smile faded into something more vulnerable. "Everything," she said simply, her eyes reflecting the depth of their bond. "We were partners in every sense of the word. We fought side by side. We lived, we laughed, we loved. And then, you were taken from me." Logan's chest tightened at the thought of it, being separated from Serafina, from everything they had built together. He reached out, taking her hand in his, the symbol on his wrist glowing brighter as their connection deepened. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for forgetting, for leaving you alone." Serafina squeezed his hand gently, her voice soft but full of resolve. "You didn't leave me, Logan. You were taken, but you're back now, and that's what matters." Their moment of quiet connection was interrupted by a sudden noise from the trees behind them. Logan sprang to his feet, his body tense with anticipation. Serafina was beside him in an instant, her eyes scanning the darkness. "Mem Corp," she whispered, her voice filled with dread. Before they could react, figures in black emerged from the shadows, their weapons raised. Logan's heart raced as the agents surrounded them. He glanced at Serafina, her face set in determination. "We can't let them take us," Serafina said, her voice low. "We're too close." Logan nodded, adrenaline flooding his system. The fight was on. The next few days were a blur of battles, chases, and narrow escapes. MemCorp agents pursued them relentlessly, their advanced technology making them formidable foes. But Logan and Serafina's connection, and their combined knowledge of Etheria, gave them an edge. As they journeyed deeper into the heart of Etheria, they encountered the planet's trials, ancient tests designed to protect the artifact. Each trial tested their bond, their intelligence, and their resolve. In one trial, they found themselves in a labyrinth of light, where every wrong turn disoriented their minds and warped their perception of reality. Logan struggled to keep his footing as the walls around him shifted, but Serafina's hand in his kept him grounded. "We have to trust each other," she whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We've been through worse." With her guidance, they navigated the maze, emerging on the other side, their bond stronger than ever. The final trial brought them to the edge of a precipice, where the artifact lay hidden beneath a shimmering pool of water. The void's influence was stronger here, its dark tendrils creeping into the sky, threatening to consume everything. "We're almost there," Serafina said, her voice strained with exhaustion. "But we'll have to face the void head on." Logan's pulse quickened. The air was thick with tension as they approached the artifact, its energy pulsating in sync with the symbols on their wrists. The closer they got, the stronger the pull of the void became. Dark clouds swirled overhead, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Suddenly, the sky split open, and a massive form emerged. The void, a cosmic entity of unimaginable power. Its presence filled the air with dread, and Logan felt its pull on his mind, threatening to erase everything once again. But Serafina was beside him, her strength unwavering. "We can stop it," she whispered, her hand gripping his tightly. Together. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Logan had ever experienced. The void was a force of destruction, relentless in its attempts to consume them. But the artifact, now fully awakened, responded to their combined energy. Logan and Serafina stood at the center of the storm, their hands entwined as they channeled the power of Etheria through the artifact. The symbols on their wrists glowed with blinding light, and the artifact pulsed in response, sending waves of energy into the void. The struggle was intense, but as their energy aligned, the tide began to turn. The void's tendrils recoiled, its form weakening under the assault of their combined willpower. With one final surge of energy, the artifact unleashed its full power, and the void screamed as it was pulled back into the cosmic abyss from which it came. The sky cleared, and the world around them fell silent. Breathing heavily, Logan turned to Serafina, their hands still clasped together. "We did it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. Serafina smiled, her eyes shining with tears of relief. "We did." As the portal between Earth and Etheria solidified, they knew their fight was far from over, but they had each other, and together they were ready for whatever came next. Logan stood beside Serafina, the glow of Etheria fading as they returned to Earth through the portal. His mind buzzed with everything that had happened, the revelation of his past, their fight against the void, and the bond he shared with Serafina. The connection between them was undeniable, and the weight of what they had accomplished pressed heavily on his chest. Yet in the stillness that followed their victory, there was also a palpable tension, a sense of unfinished business. They found themselves standing in an empty lot just outside the city, the night air cool against their skin. The skyline of the city twinkled in the distance, but here, away from the noise and bustle, it was just the two of them, bathed in the soft light of the moon. Logan glanced at Serafina, her blue skin shimmering faintly under the moonlight. She caught him looking and smiled, her eyes reflecting the quiet intimacy of the moment. "I miss this," she said softly, stepping closer, her hand brushing his. "Being with you, without the weight of the universe on our shoulders." Logan's heart raced as he looked down at her, his thumb grazing over her knuckles, their hands naturally intertwining. "I missed it too. Even though I didn't remember, there was always something missing, something I couldn't quite place until I found you again." Serafina tilted her head, her luminous eyes searching his face. "It's hard to believe everything we've been through, everything that was taken from us, but I knew we'd find our way back to each other." She hesitated, her lips curving into a teasing smile. "Even if it did take you a while to remember me." Logan chuckled, the sound soft in the night air. "Yeah, well, memory wipes will do that." His tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "But now that I do remember, I don't want to lose you again." Serafina's expression softened, the teasing glimmer in her eyes replaced with something deeper, more vulnerable. She stepped closer, her free hand lifting to rest gently against his chest. "You won't," she whispered, her voice steady despite the emotion that filled it. "Not this time." The final trial brought them to the edge of a precipice, where the artifact lay hidden beneath a shimmering pool of water. The void's influence was stronger here, its dark tendrils creeping into the sky, threatening to consume everything. "We're almost there," Serafina said, her voice strained with exhaustion. "But we'll have to face the void head-on." Logan's pulse quickened. The air was thick with tension as they approached the artifact, its energy pulsating in sync with the symbols on their wrists. The closer they got, the stronger the pull of the void became. Dark clouds swirled overhead, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Suddenly, the sky split open, and a massive form emerged. The void, a cosmic entity of unimaginable power. Its presence filled the air with dread, and Logan felt its pull on his mind, threatening to erase everything once again. But Serafina was beside him, her strength unwavering. "We can stop it," she whispered, her hand gripping his tightly. Together. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Logan had ever experienced. The void was a force of destruction, relentless in its attempts to consume them. But the artifact, now fully awakened, responded to their combined energy. Logan and Serafina stood at the center of the storm, their hands entwined as they channeled the power of Etheria through the artifact. The symbols on their wrists glowed with blinding light, and the artifact pulsed in response, sending waves of energy into the void. The struggle was intense, but as their energy aligned, the tide began to turn. The void's tendrils recoiled, its form weakening under the assault of their combined willpower. With one final surge of energy, the artifact unleashed its full power, and the void screamed as it was pulled back into the cosmic abyss from which it came. The sky cleared, and the world around them fell silent. Breathing heavily, Logan turned to Serafina, their hands still clasped together. "We did it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. Serafina smiled, her eyes shining with tears of relief. "We did." As the portal between Earth and Etheria solidified, They knew their fight was far from over, but they had each other, and together they were ready for whatever came next. Logan stood beside Serafina, the glow of Etheria fading as they returned to Earth through the portal. His mind buzzed with everything that had happened, the revelation of his past, their fight against the void, and the bond he shared with Serafina. The connection between them was undeniable, and the weight of what they had accomplished pressed heavily on his chest. Yet in the stillness that followed their victory, there was also a palpable tension, a sense of unfinished business. They found themselves standing in an empty lot just outside the city, the night air cool against their skin. The skyline of the city twinkled in the distance, but here, away from the noise and bustle, it was just the two of them, bathed in the soft light of the moon. Logan glanced at Serafina, her blue skin shimmering faintly under the moonlight. She caught him looking and smiled, her eyes reflecting the quiet intimacy of the moment. "I miss this," she said softly, stepping closer, her hand brushing his. "Being with you, without the weight of the universe on our shoulders." Logan's heart raced as he looked down at her, his thumb grazing over her knuckles, their hands naturally intertwining. "I missed it too. Even though I didn't remember, there was always something missing, something I couldn't quite place until I found you again." Serafina tilted her head, her luminous eyes searching his face. "It's hard to believe everything we've been through, everything that was taken from us, but I knew we'd find our way back to each other." She hesitated, her lips curving into a teasing smile. "Even if it did take you a while to remember me." Logan chuckled, the sound soft in the night air. "Yeah, well, memory wipes will do that." His tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious. "But now that I do remember, I don't want to lose you again." Serafina's expression softened, the teasing glimmer in her eyes replaced with something deeper, more vulnerable. She stepped closer, her free hand lifting to rest gently against his chest. "You won't," she whispered, her voice steady despite the emotion that filled it. "Not this time." Their proximity was electric, the space between them charged with everything they had fought for and everything they had yet to explore. Logan's gaze dropped to her lips, the pull undeniable. Slowly he leaned in, his breath mingling with hers as their foreheads touched, the world around them falling away. Serafina's eyes fluttered shut, and with a soft sigh she closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was both tender and filled with the promise of everything they had been denied. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, as if they were making up for lost time. Logan's hands slipped around her waist, pulling her closer, and Serafina's fingers trailed up the back of his neck, tangling gently in his hair. The connection between them was raw and powerful, not just physical but emotional, a reunion of souls that had been torn apart and were finally finding their way back to one another. When they finally broke apart, breathless but unwilling to pull too far away, Serafina rested her head against Logan's chest, the steady beat of his heart grounding them both. "So, what now?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Logan looked down at her, his hand gently stroking her back. "We figure it out together," he replied. "There's still so much we don't know about the Void, MemCorp, and what they were really after. But one thing's for sure, I'm not going to let them take you from me again." Serafina smiled, lifting her head to meet his gaze. "I'd like to see them try." They stayed there for a while, just holding each other, the weight of the world finally easing from their shoulders. But as much as they wanted to linger in this moment, they knew the fight wasn't over. The Void had been stopped for now, but its influence remained, and MemCorp was still out there, their intentions shadowy and dangerous. Logan pulled away slightly, his brow furrowing in thought. "We need to be careful. MemCorp knows about us. They won't stop until they've silenced us for good." Serafina nodded, her expression growing serious. "Then we'll stay one step ahead of them. We've come this far, and we're stronger together. We'll find out what they're hiding, and we'll stop them before they can hurt anyone else." Logan smiled at her determination, his heart swelling with pride. "I've missed your stubbornness," he teased, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But you're right. We've got this." Serafina smirked, her confidence radiating. You always loved my stubbornness." Before Logan could respond, a distant rumble echoed through the quiet night. Both of them tensed, their eyes scanning the horizon. In the distance, faint lights flickered, moving rapidly toward them. MemCorp agents. "They're coming," Serafina whispered, her hand tightening around Logan's. Logan nodded, his mind racing. "We need to move." Together, they bolted across the empty lot, their footsteps silent against the dirt. The adrenaline surged through Logan's veins as they slipped into the shadows of the city, the distant lights of MemCorp agents growing fainter behind them. Serafina led the way, her movements fluid and precise, and Logan followed, his trust in her absolute. As they ducked into an alleyway, catching their breath, Logan glanced at Serafina, his chest still heaving. "Looks like it's time for the next chapter," he said, his tone light despite the danger. Serafina smiled, her blue eyes glinting with mischief. "Good thing I'm a fan of sequels." They shared a quick, breathless kiss before slipping deeper into the night, ready for whatever came next, together.